The night was cold on the colony world, and the streets were quiet except for the sound of boots on metal ground and the low hum of neon lights. A human named Daniel sat at a small food stall, his hands wrapped around a steaming bowl of soup. He was tired after a long day of work, and the warmth of the food gave him comfort. He wanted to eat in peace, but something made him stop. He felt it. Eyes watching him. At first he thought it was nothing, but then he turned his head slowly. In the corner, just past the edge of the dim light, two figures stood close together. They were small, thin, and wrapped in worn gray cloth. They did not speak. They did not move. But their eyes told the truth. The older one, a girl, had sharp alien features. Her skin was pale with faint markings glowing under the neon lights. Her hair fell over her face, but her eyes burned with both hunger and pride. Beside her stood a much smaller girl, clearly her little sister. The child's hands clutched a broken toy, half of it missing. Her wide eyes were locked on Daniel's bowl of soup. Daniel looked down at his food, then back at them. The younger one licked her lips and hid behind her sister, but she kept staring. The older girl pulled her close, trying to protect her. She whispered something in her language, soft and quick. The child nodded, but her eyes never left the soup. Daniel sighed. He had seen this before. Hunger that stripped away dignity. He raised his hand and called to the stall owner. "2 more bowls," he said. The owner frowned. "For them? Not your problem, human." But Daniel's look was steady, and the man muttered, "Fine." The bowls came, steam rising in the cold air. Daniel stood, carried them over, and placed them in front of the girls. The younger one froze. Her small hands shook as she looked at her sister for permission. The older girl hesitated, then gave a slow nod. In seconds, the little one grabbed the bowl and began to eat as if she had not eaten in days. The soup splashed, but she did not care. Daniel sat back down, watching quietly. The older girl still stood stiff. She touched the food but did not eat much. Instead, her eyes stayed on him, sharp and cautious. She seemed ready to pull her sister away if anything went wrong. When the little one finished, her cheeks red from the heat of the soup, she reached into her cloth wrap and pulled out the broken toy. She walked forward, trembling, and held it out to Daniel. Her voice was small, almost too soft to hear. "For the food?" Daniel looked at the toy. It was nothing. A piece of old plastic, cracked, one side missing, but the way she held it made it heavy with meaning. He shook his head. "Keep it," he said gently. But the girl pushed it forward again, her big eyes shining with both fear and determination. The older sister stepped closer. She finally spoke in broken human tongue, her voice hoarse but steady. "She must repay, always repay." Daniel frowned. "It's just food," he said. But the alien girl's expression did not change. She whispered again, words strange yet sharp. "Debt binds, even across stars." Something in her voice sent a chill through him. It was not only about hunger anymore. It was about a promise, a bond, a rule older than the colony itself. He looked into her glowing eyes, and for the first time, he felt he was stepping into something far bigger than a meal. In the shadows behind them, movement stirred. Daniel noticed merchants watching, guards whispering. Eyes followed not him, but the girls, and suddenly he understood. This was not just about food. These sisters carried something dangerous, and by feeding them, he had just taken the first step into their world. The night grew colder, yet the steam rising from the bowls brought a small island of warmth. The little alien girl clutched her empty bowl against her chest like it was treasure. Her lips were still wet with broth, and her eyes sparkled for the first time. It was a look Daniel could not forget, gratitude mixed with fear. The older sister stayed silent. She stood between Daniel and her younger sibling, one hand resting on the child's shoulder. Her sharp alien eyes studied him like he was a puzzle. Finally, she crouched down and whispered something to her sister. The child nodded, then shyly placed the broken toy back into her small pouch. Daniel almost smiled, but the older girl's face remained unreadable. Daniel tried to ease the silence. Do you want more? He asked softly. The younger one perked up instantly, but the sister shook her head quickly. She did not want to appear weak. Instead, she finally took her own bowl and began to eat, slow and careful. Her movements were graceful, almost ritual. Each spoonful was like a ceremony, measured, respectful, as if wasting food was a crime. Daniel noticed her hands. They were scarred, small cuts across her fingers. She must have done hard work, far too heavy for her age. He wondered what kind of life had left these children alone on a colony world where no one cared. A group of merchants walked by, their voices loud. Their eyes fell on the sisters, and one of them spat on the ground. "Filthy strays," he muttered. In a thick accent, the younger sister shrank against the wall. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He could feel the tension in the older girl's shoulders as she froze, waiting for danger. When the merchants left, Daniel leaned closer. "You don't belong here, do you?" he asked. The older girl's spoon stopped mid-air. Her eyes snapped to his, cold and sharp. For a moment she looked ready to grab her sister and run, but then something softened. She lowered her gaze and whispered, "No home." Those two words carried weight heavier than any explanation. Daniel felt them settle in his chest. "Where are your parents?" he asked gently. The girl's lips pressed tight. She did not answer. Instead, she held her little sister close and shook her head. The younger one, innocent and less guarded, suddenly spoke in a trembling voice. Her human words were broken, but Daniel understood. "Mama gone, Papa gone, bad men take." She hugged her toy tightly again, as if it was all she had left. Daniel froze. His stomach tightened. He had not expected this answer. He wanted to ask more, but the older sister glared, warning him not to push. The silence grew heavy until the child's small voice broke it again. "We repay, human, we repay." Daniel frowned. "You don't need to." But the older girl straightened, her back proud even in her ragged clothes. "Must repay," she said firmly. "Always our way." Her voice had that same strange strength he had heard before. The words sounded like more than just tradition. It was as if she was speaking a rule written into her very blood. Daniel felt uneasy. He had given them food without thinking, but now it felt like he had signed something unseen. The stall owner came over and placed another small plate of bread. "For them," he muttered almost grudgingly. He gave Daniel a strange look before walking away. Daniel noticed again. People were watching. Their eyes were not on him, but on the alien girls. Whispers passed in the dark. Suspicion and greed. In their tone, the younger sister reached for the bread happily. Her smile was small but real. Daniel felt his heart warm at the sight, yet at the same time the older girl's whisper echoed in his mind. "Debt binds, even across stars." Daniel realized then, this simple, warm meal was not simple at all. He had stepped into a story. That was no longer his choice to leave, and from the shadows unseen figures waited, watching every bite the sisters took, as if the meal itself had sealed a fate no one could escape. The colony night grew quieter, yet Daniel could not shake the feeling that something unseen was moving around him. The food stall's glow barely pushed back the shadows, but those shadows seemed to breathe, watching him, watching the two alien girls beside him. The younger, one leaned against her sister, full and drowsy from the meal. Her small hand still held the broken toy close like a shield against the world. Daniel thought she might fall asleep right there, but the older girl never relaxed. Her glowing eyes followed every sound, every movement, as if danger would leap out any second. Daniel cleared his throat, trying to ease the heavy silence. "You don't have to repay me," he said gently. "It was just food." The older sister turned to him. Her face looked young, but her eyes seemed older than her years. "No," she whispered, her voice firm but low. "Debt binds. Debt stronger than hunger." Daniel frowned. "That's not how we humans do things. You just say thank you and move on." The girl shook her head slowly. "Not our way. Not my people's way. We repay or we break honor." There was no smile in her voice, no softness. It was more than custom. It was law, carved deep into her spirit. Daniel felt unease rise in his chest. It sounded less like gratitude and more like a chain. The younger one stirred and looked up at him with sleepy eyes. "You help us, human," she murmured in broken words. Yours now." Daniel blinked. "Yours? What do you mean by that?" The older girl hushed her sister quickly, pressing a hand to her mouth. She shot Daniel a sharp look, but it was too late. The words hung in the air. The child had spoken without fear, without guard, and Daniel had heard every syllable. Before he could question further, a shadow moved near the stall. A tall merchant leaned against a post, his lips curling into a cruel grin. "Feeding strays, are you, human?" he said mockingly. "Be careful. Some debts are poison, they'll drown you." Daniel's hand tightened around his bowl. "They're just kids," he said flatly. The merchant's grin widened. "Kids or property?" His eyes slid toward the sisters like a predator eyeing prey. Then he spat on the ground and walked away, his laughter echoing in the alley. Daniel turned back to the girls. The younger one trembled and buried her face in her sister's side. The older sister's jaw tightened, but her voice stayed calm. "We must leave soon," she whispered. "Too many eyes." Daniel leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Why are they watching you? Why does feeding you bring trouble?" The girl looked at him, her gaze sharp, searching his face for answers she did not find. Finally, she whispered, "Because of who we were." Her words sent a chill through Daniel. "Who you were?" he asked. But she only shook her head, refusing to explain. The younger one peeked out again, her small voice trembling. "We repay you, human. We give all we have." She opened her pouch and pulled out a few strange trinkets, small shells, a shard of crystal, worthless junk to most. But she held them with both hands like treasure. Daniel shook his head quickly. "No, keep it." But the child pushed them toward him anyway, her eyes desperate. "Please." The older girl placed her hand gently over the child's, pushing the items back into the pouch. "Not this way," she whispered. "Repayment will be true nut scraps." Then she looked at Daniel, her eyes glowing brighter. "One day you will see, we repay in full no matter what it costs." Daniel's heart sank. The way she said it, it wasn't a promise, it was a vow. And in the shadows beyond the stall, Daniel felt it again. Those watching eyes, the kind that did not forgive kindness, the kind that hunted it. The warm meal was finished, but the true debt had only begun. The food stall closed for the night, lanterns dimming one by one until only the neon signs across the street flickered faintly. Daniel stood, pulling his coat tighter against the cold air. The two alien sisters stayed close together, the older one holding the little girl's hand firmly. She did not ask Daniel for help, but she also did not move away from him. The streets seemed empty, yet Daniel could feel it. The weight of unseen eyes. Every step echoed too loudly. Every corner seemed to hide something waiting. He slowed his pace, scanning the alleys. His instincts whispered danger. The younger sister yawned, her tiny body stumbling from exhaustion. Daniel reached out without thinking, steadying her before she fell. She looked up at him with wide, trusting eyes. For a moment, his heart softened. But when he glanced at the older girl, her gaze was sharp, testing him again, as if daring him to break the fragile trust she had given. From behind, footsteps scraped the ground. Daniel turned quickly, but the sound stopped. The alley was empty, only shadows stretching long and dark. The older girl stiffened, her hand tightening on her sister's arm. She whispered something, in her own language, urgent and clipped. The child pressed against her side, fear in her face. Daniel stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "Someone's following us," he muttered. The girl gave a small nod. "Always," she whispered. "They never stop watching." Her words sent a chill down his spine. Daniel glanced around again. He could not see anyone, but he could feel them. He remembered the merchant's mocking grin, the way people had stared. Something about these two girls was more than just poverty. They carried a secret, and that secret had painted a target on their backs. They turned into a quieter street, neon lights replaced by broken lamps. Daniel saw movement, a shadow slipping behind a pile of crates. His hand instinctively went to the small knife he kept at his belt. He wasn't a fighter, not really, but he had been in enough rough colonies to know when trouble was close. The older girl noticed his hand near the knife. Her expression flickered with something unreadable. "You fight for us?" she whispered. Daniel glanced at her. "I don't like bullies," he said simply, her lips pressed into a thin line, as if those words meant more than he understood. Suddenly, the younger sister tugged on Daniel's coat, pointing with her small eyes, she whispered. Her voice was trembling. "Shining eyes." Daniel followed her finger, and for a moment, he saw it too. Two faint glimmers in the dark, watching. Then they vanished, swallowed by shadow. The older girl pulled her sister closer. "We must keep moving," she said quickly. Her voice was calm, but Daniel could hear the edge of fear hiding beneath. They moved faster now, weaving through the narrow streets. Daniel kept glancing back, his chest tight. He thought of leaving, just walking away and letting them disappear into the night. But each time he looked at the little one clutching her broken toy, he knew he couldn't. At last, they reached a small abandoned storage bay. The walls rusted, the doors broken. The older girl guided her sister inside. Daniel followed reluctantly. The air was thick with dust, but at least it was shelter. The child curled up in a corner, her toy held against her chest. Within moments, she drifted into sleep, her small breath soft in the silence. The older girl remained awake, her glowing eyes never leaving the broken doorway. Daniel leaned against the wall, his voice low. "Who are they? The ones watching you?" For the longest time, she did not answer. Then finally she whispered, "Hunters. They want us. They will not stop." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Why?" "You're just kids." Her eyes shifted to him, filled with something heavy. "Not just kids," she said softly. "We carry blood they fear." Before Daniel could ask what she meant, a sound broke the silence, a soft scrape against metal, slow and deliberate. Someone was out there, moving closer. Daniel's hand tightened on his knife. His heart pounded. The warm meal was long gone, and now the shadows had come to collect their price. The storage bay was silent except for the soft breathing of the little one asleep in the corner. Her tiny body curled around her broken toy as though it could protect her from the world. Daniel sat nearby, knife in hand, his ears straining for every sound outside. The older sister did not rest. She stood near the doorway, her glowing eyes scanning the dark, a guard far too young for the role she carried. After a long silence, Daniel spoke. "If I'm risking my neck, I deserve to know what's going on." His voice was low but steady. "Why are they after you? Why does feeding you put a target on me too?" The girl turned her head slightly, her sharp features half lit by the broken lamp above. For a moment she said nothing. Her jaw clenched as if she was holding back a storm of words. Then slowly she whispered, "Because of who we were." Daniel frowned. "You said that before. What does it mean?" Her gaze drifted to her sleeping sister, softening for the first time. "She does not remember," she murmured. "Too young when it happened. That is mercy. I remember everything. And mercy was not given to me." She stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Our parents, they were not just anyone. My mother held counsel with leaders. My father carried a name feared in many systems. We lived in halls of stone and light. We had guards, servants, banners of our house flying above the city." Daniel blinked, surprise flickering across his face. "So you're nobles? Royalty?" The girl's lips pressed into a thin line. "Once, yes. Now, nothing. Her words carried both pride and grief. She sat slowly on the cold floor, her hands tightening around her knees. They came one night. Raiders, mercenaries, men bought with blood credits. They tore through our halls, burning everything. My mother fought to shield us, my father ordered us to run. But we were too small, too slow. They caught us. Daniel's chest tightened. He saw flashes of her story painted across her glowing eyes. Fire, screams, the clash of steel against stone. But you escaped, he said softly. She nodded. Barely. A servant carried us into the tunnels. She died for it, her blood still on my hands when we crawled out. From that night we were hunted, not for what we had, but for what we are. Our bloodline is a threat, even broken, even starving. Daniel exhaled sharply. His mind pieced together what the merchant's whispers and cruel stares had meant. These girls were not just strays. They were survivors of something bigger, something dangerous. The girl's voice hardened. That is why we repay, human. Every act matters, every debt binds. If we cannot hold our house, we can still hold our honor. Daniel stared at her, the weight of her words pressing down on him. A warm meal, something so simple to him, had become a chain across species, across worlds, a bond he had not chosen, but one that would not break. The younger sister stirred in, her sleep murmuring softly. Her toy slipped from her hands. Daniel picked it up gently, placing it back beside her. His eyes lingered on the broken plastic, cracked but still treasured. It was not just a toy. It was memory, survival, love in its last form. He looked back at the older sister. So what now, you just keep running until they catch you? Her eyes flared, defiance burning. No, she whispered. Until we repay, until debt is fulfilled, until we are more than prey. Before Daniel could answer, a sound outside sliced through the silence. Boots on metal, slow, heavy, deliberate. The girl stood instantly, her body tense like a drawn bow. She met Daniel's eyes, her voice calm but sharp. They've found us. Daniel rose to his feet, knife in hand, his heart pounded. The lost, past had spoken, and now it had come knocking on the door. The air in the storage bay grew heavy as the footsteps outside grew louder. Daniel gripped his knife tighter, his pulse beating in his ears. The older sister pressed a finger to her lips, her glowing eyes fixed on the doorway. The younger one stirred awake, sensing the fear in the air. She clutched her toy and looked up at her sister with wide, frightened eyes. A shadow stretched across the doorway, then a figure stepped inside. He was tall, armored in dark plates scratched by many battles. His face carried cruel confidence. Behind him, two more hunters stood like silent wolves. The leader's eyes locked on the sisters, and a slow smile spread across his face. Well, the man drawled, his voice deep and rough. The strays finally cornered themselves. Makes my work easy. The older girl moved in front of her sister, her small frame standing tall despite the danger. You will not touch her, she said firmly. Her voice did not tremble. The hunter laughed, the sound echoing against the rusted walls. Still proud, even in rags. You've got your father's fire, girl. Shame it won't save you. His gaze slid toward Daniel. And what's this? A human playing guardian? Brave or just foolish? Daniel kept his knife raised, though he knew it was nothing against armor and weapons. They're just kids, he said, his voice sharp. Walk away. The man tilted his head, amused. You think you can order me, human? No, I won't kill you. Not yet, I've got a better idea. He took a step closer, the floor groaning under his boots. Give the girls to me, and I'll let you walk out of here alive. No questions, no chains, no blood on your hands. Daniel felt the weight of the offer settle like poison in the air. He glanced at the sisters, the younger one trembling, the older one standing firm, her eyes daring him to choose. He thought of the warm meal, the whispered vow, the broken toy offered as repayment. He thought of the law of her people. Debts must be repaid. The hunter smirked, seeing his hesitation. You don't know what you're holding, human. These two aren't just starving strays, they're marks worth more than 100 lifetimes of your labor. Sell them and you'll never have to work again. Isn't that tempting? Daniel's stomach turned. He had lost jobs before. He had lived on scraps. He knew the taste of desperation. But as he looked at the sisters, one asleep with her toy, one standing like a soldier without armor, he knew the answer. No deal, he said, his voice steady. The hunter's grin faded into a scowl. Careful, human, I'm offering you mercy. Daniel shook his head. Mercy doesn't come at the cost of children. The older sister's eyes widened slightly, surprise flashing. Across her face she had expected betrayal, but instead she heard defiance. For the first time a flicker of trust lit in her gaze. The hunter growled, "Then you've chosen death." He motioned to his men, who stepped forward, their weapons glinting in the faint light. The younger sister whimpered and buried her face in her siblings' clothes. The older girl crouched low, whispering in her own tongue words sharp and ancient. Then she looked at Daniel, her voice calm, almost like prophecy. You bound yourself when you fed us, human. Our debt is now your shield. Our law is stronger than theirs. Daniel barely had time to understand before the hunters lunged. He stepped forward, knife raised, ready to fight even if he fell. The dangerous offer had been made and refused. Now only blood and fate would decide the price. The moment the hunters moved, chaos erupted inside the rusted storage bay. Daniel slashed with his knife, forcing one of the armored men to stumble back. Sparks flew as steel met metal. The older sister pulled her little sibling behind the broken crates, shielding her with her own body. The leader barked orders, his voice sharp like a whip. Take the brats alive. Kill the human if he resists. Daniel's breath came hard and fast. His knife was small, his arm shaking from the force of each block. He had no training for this, no strength against armored killers. But he had something the hunters did not expect. Desperation and stubbornness. With every strike he thought of the girls, of the warm meal, of the whispered debt, and it drove him to stand where no sane man would. The older sister suddenly shouted something in her alien tongue. Her voice cut through the clash, and the little one sprang up from behind the crates, clutching her broken toy. She threw it across the floor with all her might. The hunters flinched, mistaking the movement for a weapon, and in that split second, Daniel lunged, ramming his shoulder into one of them, knocking him into the wall. Run, Daniel shouted, his voice raw. The sisters obeyed, dashing toward the doorway, their bare feet light on the cold floor. The older girl glanced back only once, her glowing eyes locking with Daniel's. Something unspoken passed between them. Both, a warning and a promise. Daniel pushed past the crates and followed, the hunters roaring behind. Blaster fire lit the night as they spilled into the streets. Bolts of red seared past them, striking metal walls. The younger sister screamed as sparks rained down, but her older sibling held her hand tight, never letting go. The alleys twisted like a maze, narrow passages lit only by the flicker of failing neon. Daniel's boots pounded the ground, his chest burning. He grabbed the younger one's arm for a moment, steadying her when she tripped. Keep moving, he urged. Behind them, the hunters gave chase, their heavy steps echoing like drums of war. There's no escape, the leader's voice bellowed through the night. You can't outrun us. But Daniel knew the colony's streets better than they did. He cut corners sharp, pulled the girls down side paths barely wide enough to squeeze through. They ducked under broken fences, leapt over trash heaps. The hunters followed, but their armor slowed them. Their size was a curse in the cramped alleys. Daniel's lungs burned, but he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. Not with the sound of those small feet beside him. Not with the image of the little girl clutching her. Broken toy burned into his mind. At one turn, a blaster bolt grazed the wall just inches from the sisters. The older girl pushed her sibling ahead, taking the brunt of the fall as they hit the ground. Daniel yanked them up, his voice sharp. This
way.
They burst out of the alley into the wider market district. The stalls were empty at this hour, cloth banners fluttering in the cold wind. Daniel cursed under his breath. Open ground meant no cover. The hunters spread out behind them, their shadows stretching long under the neon. The leader's laughter carried on the air. You're running in circles, human. You'll die tired. The older sister glanced at Daniel, her breath ragged. We cannot run forever, she whispered. Her eyes glowed brighter, strange symbols faintly burning across her skin. But our law still holds. We repay, even now. Daniel didn't understand her words, but he saw the fire in her gaze, the same fire he had seen when she first refused to bow. She wasn't running as prey anymore. She was running toward something. The chase thundered through the colony streets, fear at their heels, hope burning only faintly in their hearts. The night was far from over and the hunters were far from done.